Stepmother shredded poor girl's art scholarship in front of guests. One guest was the billionaire art collector who offered it. Nia stood frozen as her stepmother tore the scholarship letter into confetti, laughing while dinner guests watched in silence. The papers scattered across the polished floor, her only escape from years of cleaning other people's homes. One guest rose slowly, his eyes locked on the shredded pieces of his company's letterhead. The morning had started like every other. Nia woke before dawn in the converted storage room, her mattress thin against the concrete floor. Through the small window above her head, she watched the sky shift from black to gray. Her mother's garden waited outside, the one thing her stepmother hadn't touched, maybe because even Keisha understood some things grew despite being ignored. She dressed in the dark, pulling on the clothes she kept for her early morning work. 6 houses today, Mrs. Patterson at 7, the Johnsons at 9, 3 more before her afternoon class at the community college. Her hands already ached, remembering yesterday's floors, the way bleach dried her skin no matter how much lotion she applied. The house was silent as she moved through it. Her father's bedroom door stayed closed. It had been closed for 3 years, since the morning he brought Keisha home and announced they'd married at the courthouse. Nia had been 16, still sleeping in her childhood bedroom decorated with her mother's paintings. By that evening, her clothes were in garbage bags in the storage room, and Keisha's daughter Imani claimed the space that smelled like lavender and turpentine. Nia slipped out the back door, passed through her mother's garden. The roses her mother planted were blooming. She touched one, felt the dew cold against her fingertips, and kept walking. Mrs. Patterson's house sat on Magnolia Street, where the wealthy families maintained their generational homes. The old woman met her at the door, already dressed despite the early hour. "Your mama used to bring you here when you were small," Mrs. Patterson said, "like she did every week. You'd sit at my kitchen table and draw while she worked." Nia nodded, moved past her toward the cleaning supplies. The routine was muscle memory now. Start upstairs, work down, bathrooms first, then bedrooms, living spaces last. She scrubbed tile grout with a toothbrush, wiped baseboards, made sure every surface gleamed. Mrs. Patterson followed her sometimes, talking about Nia's mother, about art, about the scholarship program she'd seen advertised in the county paper. "You should apply," Mrs. Patterson had said months ago. "The Ashford Foundation. They're looking for young artists." Nia had applied in secret, using Mrs. Patterson's address for correspondence, photographing her paintings late at night when the house slept. She'd submitted her work, images of her mother's garden, the hands of women she cleaned for, her father's face the day of the funeral when grief made him unreachable. She hadn't told anyone. Hope felt dangerous when you'd learned to expect disappointment. The letter arrived on a Tuesday. Mrs. Patterson handed it to her after she finished cleaning, her eyes bright. "Open it, child." The Ashford Foundation Arts Program. Full scholarship to their urban academy in Atlanta. Living stipend. Mentorship with renowned collectors. Nia read it 3 times, the words blurring. Her hands shook. Mrs. Patterson hugged her, smelling like lavender soap and coffee. "Your mama's watching," the old woman whispered. "She knows." Nia folded the letter carefully, slipped it into her bag. Tonight was Keisha's dinner party, the one she'd been planning for weeks. Local business owners, the president of the community bank, families Keisha wanted to impress now that they'd moved to the nice side of town. Nia would wait until after, when the guests left and the house quieted. Then she'd tell her father, just him at first, let him have the news before Keisha turned it into something else. By 6 that evening, the house transformed. Keisha had spent the day arranging flowers, setting the dining room table with china she'd bought specifically for this night. She'd made Nia press the tablecloth that morning before her cleaning jobs, iron every napkin, polish silver that had never been used. "You'll serve," Keisha said, not looking at her. "Imani will sit with the guests." Nia had expected this. She changed into her cleaning clothes, the ones that marked her as help, not family. In the kitchen, she arranged appetizers on trays, filled water glasses, checked the roast in the oven. Through the doorway, she watched guests arrive. Men in suits, women in dresses that cost more than Nia made in a month. They kissed Keisha's cheeks, complimented the house, settled into chairs like they belonged. One guest arrived alone, brought by Mr. Daniels from the community bank. He was young, maybe late 20s, dressed simply despite the expensive watch on his wrist. He shook hands with everyone, made polite conversation, but his eyes moved around the room differently. He noticed things. The art on the walls, cheap prints Keisha bought to fill space, the books on the shelf that had never been opened, the fresh flowers arranged to hide the water stains on the windowsill. Nia served the first course, moving between chairs with practiced invisibility. The young man thanked her each time she refilled his water glass. His voice was quiet, genuine. She glanced at his face once and recognized him from the website she'd studied for months. Jamal Ashford, the foundation director, the man whose signature was on her acceptance letter. Her hand trembled. Water splashed over the rim of his glass. He steadied it with his napkin, caught her eye, smiled slightly. She retreated to the kitchen, heart racing. Dinner continued. Nia moved in and out, clearing plates, serving courses, existing in the background. She listened to Keisha laugh too loud, watched Imani perform practiced charm, saw her father sit silent at the head of the table, contributing nothing to conversations that flowed around him. Jamal Ashford spoke when asked direct questions, but mostly observed. He asked Mr. Daniels about local businesses, complimented the food, deflected questions about his foundation with the ease of someone used to protecting his privacy. "We're expanding our regional programs," he said when pressed, "looking for artists who might not have traditional access to opportunities." Keisha jumped on this. "Oh, we're very supportive of the arts. Imani took painting classes last summer." Imani smiled, nodded, said nothing about quitting after 3 sessions. Nia returned to the kitchen, checked the dessert. The letter sat in her bag by the back door, 30 feet and a lifetime away from this dining room. She imagined telling Jamal Ashford who she was, thanking him, watching Keisha's face collapse. But the fantasy died quickly. This wasn't the moment. Not here. Not like this. She was setting dessert plates when Imani appeared in the kitchen doorway, holding something, the scholarship letter. Nia's breath stopped. "Found this in your room," Imani said, loud enough to carry. "Looking for my earrings you borrowed." Nia had never borrowed anything from Imani. They both knew it. Imani walked past her into the dining room and Nia followed, dread pooling in her stomach. Keisha took the letter from Imani's hand, unfolded it slowly. The room quieted. She read silently, her expression darkening with each line. When she looked up, her eyes found Nia. "Come here." Nia walked forward. Every guest watched. Her father's gaze stayed fixed on his dessert plate. "The Ashford Foundation," Keisha read aloud, her voice dripping mockery. "Full scholarship, living stipend, mentorship." She looked at Nia. "They think you're talented. They're offering you money." Nia said nothing. There was nothing to say that would change what was coming. "You've been wasting time painting instead of working," Keisha continued, "playing artist when you should be contributing to this household. This fantasy ends now." She tore the letter, not quickly, but slowly, deliberately, letting each rip punctuate her words. The paper fell like snow, scattering across the polished floor Nia had cleaned that morning, Pieces landed on the table, on empty plates, on the shoes of guests who sat frozen. "You're a maid, not an artist," Keisha said. "Remember what you are." The room held its breath. No one moved. Nia stared at the shredded paper, her vision narrowing. She heard Mrs. Patterson's voice in her memory. "Your mama's watching. She knows." Jamal Ashford's water glass stopped halfway to his mouth. His eyes moved from the torn letter to Keisha's triumphant face, to Nia's absolute stillness. Then he set the glass down carefully and reached into his pocket, pulled out a business card, placed it face down under his napkin. His expression never changed. The guests left within 20 minutes. Apologies, early mornings, sudden remembrances of prior commitments. They filed out quickly, not meeting Nia's eyes. Mr. Daniels apologized to Keisha for bringing an unexpected guest. Keisha waved him off, already calling for Imani to help her clear the table. Nia cleaned. She collected shredded paper first, piece by piece, her hands steady now that the performance had ended. Under Jamal Ashford's napkin, she found his business card. Simple, expensive stock. His name, a phone number, nothing else. She slipped it into her pocket. Her father found her in the kitchen after midnight. The house was dark, everyone else asleep. He stood in the doorway looking at her like he wanted to say something, but the words wouldn't form. They'd been stuck inside him since the funeral, trapped beneath grief that had hardened into permanent silence. "I'm sorry," he finally whispered. "Nia rinsed the last dish?" "For which part?" He had no answer. He retreated to his bedroom and she heard the door close, that familiar sound of surrender. Keisha's new rules started the next morning. No more community college. Full-time work, 6 houses per day, all earnings turned over for household expenses. Nia's paintings, the ones she'd hidden in the storage shed behind bags of old clothes, were discovered and destroyed. Half of them burned. The rest Keisha locked away as evidence of wasted time and stolen resources. Nia salvaged what she could. The torn letter pieces went into her mother's old Bible. Her pencils and charcoal she buried in the garden. At night, she drew on receipt paper from the houses she cleaned, hid the sketches in her pillowcase, waited for dawn. The community college called. Keisha answered, told them Nia had dropped out to focus on employment, hung up before they could respond. When Mrs. Patterson asked about the scholarship, Nia shook her head once, and the old woman understood. Some battles you couldn't fight, not when you were 19 and had nowhere else to go. 2 weeks later, Keisha announced the move to Atlanta. Better opportunities, she said. Bigger house. Her father's small construction business would be sold. He agreed without protest, signed the papers, packed his tools. They'd leave in 10 days. Nia cleaned houses that had known her mother, accepted pity from women who remembered better times, refused their offers to intervene. At night, she held Jamal Ashford's business card, worn soft from being carried in her pocket. She'd never called anyone for help, didn't know how to ask for what she needed. But Atlanta meant disappearing completely, becoming whatever Keisha decided, losing even the small autonomy of her cleaning jobs. She made the call on a Tuesday morning from Mrs. Patterson's kitchen phone while the old woman pretended not to listen. A woman answered, professional, efficient. Ashford Foundation. "I'm calling about a scholarship," Nia said. "My name is Nia. Jamal Ashford gave me his card." Silence, then typing. "I don't see your name in our current class. When were you accepted?" 6 weeks ago. I couldn't confirm. There were complications." More typing. "The position was filled when you didn't respond. I'm sorry, but the deadline passed." Nia closed her eyes. "Can you give him a message?" "Mr. Ashford is very busy." "Tell him the girl from the dinner party called. The one whose letter was destroyed. Tell him I'm moving to Atlanta in 8 days." The woman's typing stopped. "Hold, please." 3 minutes passed. Mrs. Patterson squeezed Nia's shoulder. Then a man's voice, the one that had thanked her for water refills. "This is Jamal Ashford." 3 days later, Nuya took a bus to Atlanta. She told no one, used money she'd hidden from her cleaning jobs, wore her best clothes, which were still just her work uniform cleaned and pressed. The city rose around her as the bus entered downtown, glass and steel towers that made her village feel impossibly small. The Ashford Foundation occupied 15 floors of a building that reflected clouds. Security almost turned her away until she gave her name and Jamal appeared in the lobby, dressed casually but expensively, looking exactly like someone who belonged in spaces this clean. His office overlooked the city, walls covered in art that made her hidden sketches seem childish, abstract pieces worth more than her father's house, photographs of musicians and dancers, sculptures that played with light. He gestured to a chair. She sat, hands folded, waiting. "The scholarship position is filled," he said. "I can't change that, but I run a private mentorship program for displaced artists. 3-month trial residency, studio space here in the building, small living stipend. You'd work as a gallery assistant during public hours, paint in your private studio after we close." He slid a folder across his desk. "Your stepmother destroyed a letter. She can't destroy your work ethic or your vision. But this won't be easy. You'll be working while others create freely. You'll serve the same people you're trying to become." Nia opened the folder. Contract terms, housing stipend, schedule. "Can I see your work?" he asked. She pulled out her phone, showed him photos of destroyed paintings she'd taken before Keisha burned them, showed him sketches on receipt paper, drawings in the margins of grocery lists, a self-portrait done in charcoal on the back of a pizza box. He studied each image, zooming in, asking questions. What inspired this? Why these colors? How did you learn this technique? She answered honestly, explained her mother's lessons, the books she'd borrowed from the library, the YouTube videos she'd watched on Mrs. Patterson's computer. When he finished, he leaned back. "You have 3 months to prove you belong here. After that, we reassess. Understand?" She understood. This wasn't rescue. It was a chance to rescue herself. Nia moved to Atlanta with 1 suitcase, while her family moved to their new house across the city. Keisha believed she'd found cleaning work and secured her own apartment, finally stopped being a burden. Her father's goodbye was silent except for folded bills pressed into her hand, his eyes looking anywhere but her face. The foundation provided a tiny efficiency apartment in a transitional neighborhood. 1 room, kitchen in the corner, bathroom smaller than the storage room she'd left behind. But the window faced east and morning light filled the space, and it was hers. Gallery work started immediately, managing visitors, answering questions about pieces she was still learning to understand, setting up for events where wealthy patrons discussed art theory using words she had to look up later. She worked alongside art students from prestigious universities who casually mentioned summers in Paris, semester programs in Florence, critique sessions with artists whose names hung in museums. They were kind to her, invited her to gallery openings she couldn't afford to attend properly, suggested brunch spots where the cheapest item cost more than her daily food budget. They didn't mean harm. They simply lived in a different world, one where opportunity was assumed rather than fought for. Her painting time shrank to midnight hours after gallery closing. She'd walk through the empty space, study the work on the walls, try to understand what made something worthy of display. Then she'd climb to her assigned studio, a converted storage closet really, but it had an easel and north light and a door that locked. She painted her mother's garden from memory, the hands of women who'd taught her strength, her father's profile the day he stopped speaking, the shredded scholarship letter she taped back together and kept in her Bible. Jamal reviewed her work monthly. His feedback was sparse, surgical. This composition is weak. This color choice is safe. This piece says nothing new. He never softened criticism, never offered empty encouragement. She'd leave his office shaking, then return to her studio and push harder. 3 months became 6. Her trial period extended without discussion. Gallery patrons began requesting her for tours. She had a way of explaining art that made them feel intelligent rather than excluded. The foundation paid her slightly more. She moved to a better apartment with actual separation between sleeping and living space. Then the exhibition opportunity was announced. Annual Emerging Artist Showcase. 3 mentorship artists selected through blind review by visiting collectors and the foundation's advisory board. Work would be sold at auction, benefiting the program. Nia submitted her strongest pieces, 3 paintings she'd worked on for months, pouring midnight hours and the last of her savings into quality materials. She painted until her hands cramped, until her eyes burned, until the work felt true. She missed gallery shifts to finish, nearly lost her position, stopped eating properly to afford paint. But the work was done, submitted anonymously, hung in the review gallery with 24 other pieces. Selection day arrived. The advisory board gathered in the main gallery, 12 collectors and art professionals studying anonymous work. Nia worked the event as staff, serving champagne, answering questions, maintaining her invisibility. She recognized one board member immediately, Mrs. Jameson, who'd hosted the dinner party where her scholarship letter was destroyed. The woman who'd sat silent while Keisha performed her cruelty, who'd left early with apologies about morning commitments. Mrs. Jameson recognized her too. Their eyes met across the gallery. The woman's face shifted, something like shame crossing her features before she looked away. She whispered to another board member, their gazes following Nia throughout the evening. The deliberation took 2 hours. Nia refilled water glasses, cleared empty plates, existed in the background while her future was decided. When the board emerged, Jamal read the results. 3 artists selected. The first 2 names meant nothing to her. Then he said, "Third artist, 3 pieces, premium auction category, pieces 17, 18, and 19. Her work, all 3 paintings. She stood holding an empty tray, trying to keep her expression neutral while the room applauded politely. Mrs. Jameson watched her from across the gallery, something unreadable in her eyes. News spread fast in Atlanta's interconnected social circles. The foundation's promotional materials featured diversity outreach, highlighted artists from non-traditional backgrounds. Someone recognized Nia's name, connected her to Keisha's new social circle. Keisha saw her daughter's name in an email newsletter, saw her photograph on the foundation's website, smiling in front of paintings that bore her signature. She called Imani, who found Nia's social media, who showed their mother the growing attention. 3 days before the exhibition opening, Keisha appeared at the gallery during public hours. She brought Imani and 2 women from her new social club, all dressed for lunch at expensive restaurants. Nia was straightening frames when she heard that familiar voice, sharp with barely controlled rage. "There's been a misunderstanding," Keisha announced to the reception desk. "I need to speak with someone about the upcoming exhibition." Nia turned. Their eyes met. Keisha's face hardened. "You," she said, loud enough to carry through the gallery. "You're embarrassing this family with your little charity case story." Visitors stopped walking. Gallery assistants froze. Imani lifted her phone, already recording. Keisha crossed the space between them. "You need to withdraw from this exhibition. You're making us look like we abused you, like we didn't provide for you. It's a lie, and I won't tolerate it." Nia said nothing. She held a cleaning cloth, had been polishing a frame. Her hands remembered this work, the invisible labor she'd performed in houses and galleries, the silence she'd learned to wear. "Answer me," Keisha demanded. "You think you're special now? You think these people care about you? You're a charity case. That's all you'll ever be." Imani giggled, her phone steady. "This is going to be viral content." Nia's hands trembled. The cloth dropped to the floor. She bent to retrieve it, and Keisha grabbed her arm. "Look at me when I'm speaking to you." A door opened at the back of the gallery. Jamal emerged with 3 people in expensive clothes, clearly interrupted during a private viewing. He'd heard everything. They all had. He didn't rush forward, didn't intervene immediately. Instead, he watched Nia, waiting to see how she'd handle herself. She pulled her arm free gently, picked up the cloth, stepped back. "Excuse me," she said quietly. "I need to finish my work." Keisha's face flushed. "You don't walk away from me." "Yes," Nia said, still quiet, still steady. "I do." Jamal crossed the gallery floor. His voice was calm, professional, the tone of someone used to managing difficult situations. "Can I help you?" Keisha spun toward him, her expression shifting instantly. "Oh, Mr. Ashford, I'm so sorry for the disruption. I'm Nia's mother and I'm here to support her, but there's been some confusion about her background story." "Stepmother," Nia corrected. Keisha's jaw tightened. Jamal looked between them. "Is this the woman who destroyed the scholarship letter at your dinner party?" Mrs. Jameson stepped forward from the advisory group. "Yes, I was there. I witnessed it." The 3 collectors with Jamal exchanged glances. One of them, a woman in her 60s with silver hair and sharp eyes, stepped closer. "What letter?" she asked. Jamal gestured to the gallery's presentation screen. Within moments, images appeared. Nia's receipt paper sketches, photographs of her destroyed paintings, the ones Keisha had burned, the scholarship letter, taped back together, every torn piece visible. "Nia applied to our scholarship program 8 months ago," Jamal said. "She was accepted. This woman tore up the acceptance letter at a dinner party, in front of guests, while Nia served them food. She then destroyed half of Nia's artwork and forced her to quit school." He looked at Keisha. "Nia didn't lie about anything. She survived someone who tried to erase her talent. Our mentorship program exists specifically for artists who overcome extraordinary barriers." Keisha's face drained of color. Her friend stepped away slightly. Imani's phone continued recording, but her smile had vanished. The silver-haired collector studied Keisha with cold precision. "I know who you are now. Everyone in this room does. Everyone in this city will." She turned to Nia. "Your work is extraordinary, not despite what you survived, because you transformed it into truth." She pulled a card from her purse. "I'm purchasing all 3 of your paintings, premium price, and I'm doubling the foundation's commission." Keisha tried to salvage something. "I helped raise her. I provided a home." "You raised nothing," Jamal said. "You destroyed and she rebuilt herself. Security will escort you out. Don't return." Imani's recording went viral, but not the way she'd intended. The video showed Keisha's cruelty in high definition, captured Nia's quiet dignity, documented the moment the art world saw everything clearly. Within 24 hours, it had been shared thousands of times, picked up by local news, discussed on social media by people who'd never heard of the Ashford Foundation but recognized the story of someone trying to kill another person's dreams. Atlanta's social circles closed to Keisha overnight. Event invitations vanished. Her social club membership was quietly revoked. Women she'd been courting for months refused her calls, removed her from group chats, made sure she understood she was no longer welcome. The exhibition became the Foundation's most attended event. All 3 of Nia's paintings sold above estimate. She received gallery representation offers, residency invitations, and a museum acquisition for a piece she'd painted on the back of pizza box months ago. Media coverage focused on her resilience. Journalists wanted interviews. A documentary filmmaker requested access. But Naya declined most of it, uncomfortable with attention that centered her trauma rather than her work. Her father appeared at her apartment 2 weeks after the exhibition. She opened the door to find him holding a wooden box, his hands shaking slightly. "Can I come in?" She stepped aside. He entered, looked around at her small space, the paintings leaning against walls, the easel in the corner that had replaced her kitchen table. He set the box on her counter. "Your mother's painting supplies. I hid them when Keisha moved in. Should have given them to you years ago." Nia opened the box. Brushes worn soft from use. Tubes of paint, some dried but others still viable. Palette knives, charcoal sticks, a wooden palette stained with mixed colors. Her mother's handwriting on labels, organizing shades. "Your mother painted too," her father said. "After she died, I couldn't look at art without seeing her, so I let Keisha put it all away, let her erase that part of our lives. I thought it would hurt less." He looked at Nia. "I should have remembered that, should have protected that in you." Nia touched a brush, felt the worn wooden handle. "Why now?" "Because I watched that video, watched what she did to you, what I let happen, and I was ashamed." Nia closed the box carefully. "I don't forgive you, I know, but I'll think about staying in contact." He nodded, understanding this was more than he deserved. He left quietly, and Nia sat with her mother's supplies, crying for the first time since the scholarship letter was destroyed. Keisha made one more attempt. She appeared at the foundation 3 weeks later, demanding to see Jamal, threatening legal action for defamation and character assassination. Security escorted her out while patrons arriving for an afternoon viewing watched from the entrance. She sent cards to Nia's apartment, messages through intermediaries, claims of misunderstanding, offers of reconciliation that never included actual apology. Each message went unanswered. Nia blocked every avenue of contact, changed her phone number, made sure Keisha understood the door was permanently closed. Imani posted an apology video, claimed she didn't know it was that serious, that she'd been young and stupid, that she was sorry. The internet's response was brutal. Comments dissected her complicity, her laughter, her performance of cruelty for social media content. She deleted it within hours, but screenshots lived forever. 8 months after the exhibition, Nia stood in a traveling show on Southern artists. Her paintings hung beside established names, artists she'd studied in borrowed library books. Gallery visitors paused longest at her work, leaned close to read her artist statement, had quiet conversations about technique and emotional impact. No one here knew her story. They responded only to what she'd created, the images themselves divorced from context. A young girl tugged her mother's sleeve, pointed at Nia's painting of her mother's garden. "Can I paint like that?" Her mother studied the canvas. "If you work hard enough." The girl stared at the painting, memorizing it, and Nia remembered being that age, watching her mother mix colors, learning that creation was possible if you refused to stop. She returned to the foundation weekly as a visiting mentor, working with new program artists facing similar barriers. She recognized herself in their exhaustion, their doubt, their determination. She didn't offer easy answers or false promises, just honesty. "It won't be fair," she told a girl who'd been kicked out for being gay, who painted on cardboard because she couldn't afford canvas. "It will be harder than it should be, but if you can hold on to your work will hold you." She gave the girl her first receipt paper sketch, now worth thousands according to the art market. Proof that beginning small doesn't mean staying small. A year after leaving her village, Nia received a commission for a mural at the community center in her hometown. She returned for the installation, her first time back since the move. The community gathered to watch her work, former cleaning clients bringing daughters and granddaughters to meet her. She painted her mother's garden, the hands that taught her strength, faces of women who survived quietly, who passed along resilience like recipes. Mrs. Patterson sat in a folding chair all day, watching, smiling. Her father attended every day of the installation. He brought her lunch, said little, watched everything. On the final day, when the mural was complete and the community gathered for the unveiling, he stood before the painted image of his late wife's hands and touched the wall gently. "She'd be so proud," he whispered. Nia saw tears on his face, the first she'd witnessed since the funeral. She didn't touch him, didn't offer comfort, but she nodded, understanding if not forgiveness. Keisha drove past the unveiling. Nia saw the car slow, saw her stepmother's face through the window, saw the moment she decided not to stop. The car continued through town and disappeared. Nia felt nothing, no anger, no triumph. Just the blank space where a wound used to be. 3 months later, Imani sent a message, said she was in therapy, working through her own complicity, didn't expect a response but wanted Nia to know she understood what she'd done. Nia read it, deleted it, returned to her canvas. The foundation held its annual gala. Nia attended as a featured mentor, wearing a dress she'd bought herself, arriving without anxiety. She studied new mentorship applications, making notes about potential, about who reminded her of herself, about who needed the chance she'd received. Jamal found her in a quiet corner, champagne untouched in her hand. "You're looking for yourself in these stories," he observed. She shook her head. "I'm looking for who I could have been if someone hadn't looked." He smiled slightly. "That's why your work matters. You remember what it costs to be invisible." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the gala unfold around them. Two people who understood that survival was its own form of art. In her studio that night, Nia began a new series. Not trauma, but transformation. The first piece showed a young woman holding shredded paper in one hand, while the other planted seeds. She titled it after her mother's favorite saying, "Nothing wasted." Her receipt paper sketches hung framed on the studio wall now, not as reminders of suffering, but as proof of persistence. Art critics called them important historical documents. Nia called them evidence that she'd refused to disappear. A community college student reached out through social media, saw Nia's work online, was facing family pressure to quit the art program, needed advice. Nia met her at a coffee shop, listened to the familiar story, saw her younger self across the table. "It won't be fair," Nia said. "It will be harder than it should be, but if you can hold on to your work will hold you." She gave the student her first receipt paper sketch, the one that started everything. Proof that beginning small doesn't mean staying small. The girl held it carefully, reverently, understanding the weight of what she'd received. Nia stood in her studio at dawn, coffee cooling on the windowsill, canvas half finished before her. Her phone showed messages from collectors, galleries, foundations. She'd answer later. Right now, there was only light and color and the quiet truth that she'd survived. Through the window, Atlanta's skyline woke up. Glass towers caught morning sun. The city that had seemed impossibly large a year ago now felt navigable, comprehensible, hers. She picked up her brush. The same technique her mother taught her, refined by years of midnight practice, strengthened by refusal to quit. The painting emerged slowly, not a garden this time, not hands or grief or shredded letters, just color and light and the simple evidence of continuation. Some people would always try to destroy light because it exposed their darkness. But survival wasn't about their punishment. It was about her continuation. The greatest revenge was becoming undeniable. Nia painted until afternoon, until her back ached and her hands cramped and the work felt true. Then she stepped back, studied what she'd created, and knew her mother would understand. Not just the art itself, but what it cost to make it. What it meant to transform destruction into something that could not be destroyed. She cleaned her brushes, prepared for tomorrow, and let herself rest.